Is trouble coming? Are we going down? Mother, daughter, and your brother too. Get your mind straight when it's up to you. Hey, you gotta see the storm a-coming.
Hello, today's date is August the 24th, 2020, and I'm honored to have Mr. Jack Closson here with me. He's a former Marine. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake here. He is a Marine. There you go. Marines never retire. So, of course, I'm here with my grandson, Connor McDaniel, and but anyway, I ran into Mr. Closson over at Firestone one day. I was getting a security vehicle serviced, and see him sitting there with his Vietnam veteran hat on, and Marine Corps, and I've kind of made a mission to, if I see guys like him, to go up and say hi to them and maybe invite them to be on my podcast. I feel like everybody's got a story to tell, and I felt like he would, especially he combat veteran in Vietnam, and but anyway, I think these stories need to be preserved, and so the only way we do that is to record them and get them down for history, I guess. Well, first of all, let me just ask you. Of course, you know we've talked about all this before, but just tell us a little bit about yourself. You know where you're originally from, and I know you said you spent a lot of time in California, but
more than I wanted. Originally, I'm from Michigan.
Yeah.
I am the elite definition of a hillbilly, Michigan dirt farmer. I'm raised on my grandfather's farm outside a town of 12,000, which was the biggest town in the area. And right out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps. Just wanted to get out of town and go someplace and see some things.
Right.
Never realizing some of the things I was going to see.
Oh yeah.
But I got sent to San Diego. Back then, the population was such that everyone from Ohio and Indiana and Illinois and Michigan went to San Diego. Everyone else went to Parris Island. And I thought that would be cool. I wanted to get to California.
Yeah.
I didn't get to see as much as I thought I was going to.
Yeah.
After I got done infantry training at Camp Pendleton, they sent me to Memphis. I was at the Naval Air Station there in Millington. I spent a few months there while they did some tests and everything, and then they sent me to Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
I went through an A school there for aviation electrician, and got pick of duty station, so I picked El Toro because I wanted to get to California and actually see it. I spent 3 months there, and they sent me to Japan. And from Japan, we went to Vietnam in June of 1965. Didn't even know what the hell Vietnam was. Spent a few months there, and they rotated us back as a unit. We were one of the last units to come and go as a unit. And when they brought me back to the States, you'd think they'd send me to California. Cherry Point, North Carolina.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So.
Explain something to me before we move on. Is your buddy Andrew was kind of spoke of you Hollywood Marines derisively. Is there something to that, or?
There's a big rivalry in the Marine Corps. Where'd you go to boot camp? The Parris Island Marines think that theirs is the roughest and toughest, and San Diego they call us Hollywood or surfer Marines.
Yeah.
I always respond back, yeah, well, we might be Hollywood or surfer, but PI is where the women go to train.
There you go.
Which is, it's the only duty station the women train at in the Marine Corps is Paris Island.
Oh,
So we have our jabs back and forth.
good natured rivalry. There.
Oh yeah. If we ain't fighting each other, we're fighting the other services, or we're fighting the enemy.
Well, I've got there's a lot of derisive terms for the Air Force and the Army. Of course, I was in both of them, but
Yeah.
I can only imagine. Well, tell us about your first deployment to Vietnam.
It was interesting. We were at Suki Naval Air Station outside of Yokohama, Japan, and we had no idea. All we knew was, I think it was around February of '65. They started us on what was called 12 on, 12 off, and you worked 12 hours from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, and then you were off, and the other crew came in from 8 at night to 8 in the morning. So we were doing that, and we didn't know why, but they just kept us on that, and it got a little old after a while. But then in May, they started having us go through all sorts of inspections with gear and get our, what was then called 7A2 or deuce gear. Nobody's got anything like that anymore, except surplus stores.
Mm-hmm.
But they get us on this C-130s, and they say, okay, we're going down to relieve so-and-so at Da Nang, Vietnam. Hell, I think 65, I wasn't quite 20. I'd turned 20 in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So I was a 19-year-old Lance Corporal. I'm sitting there thinking, I don't even know where the hell Vietnam is. When I was learning geography, that whole area was called Indochina.
Yeah.
So we got down there, and they put us at the air base, which was originally the international airport for Da Nang.
Yeah.
And we were in tents outside there and had our bunkers set up and our fighting trenches and all that. And we did our 12 on, 12 off again, whereas when you were off, you were on duty in the trenches.
Right.
And when you were on, you were working on your aircraft.
Right,
So it wasn't a whole lot of sleep in there. But didn't matter. We were young and feisty, so we didn't care.
I know we talked about this before, but you had a little bit of action going on there, didn't you? And that first
first couple of weeks, there was this kid that used to come by, and we thought we'd help him out. He was selling Orange Crush sodas, and I developed a real taste for those suckers. But for 25 cents, you could get an Orange Crush, and it was relatively cool. Didn't think anything of it. The kid didn't look like he was older than 12 or 13, although he might have been 17 or 18 for all we know. Anyway, about 2 weeks after he'd been coming in and selling this stuff, we get hit by an attack in the middle of the night. It was an interesting attack because the lieutenant, who is supposed to be the armory chief, he had all our rifles locked up in an armory.
Yeah.
So we wake up to all this gunfire at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, whatever the hell, dark 30 it was, and we're running down to this bunker that's called an armory, and he's standing there going, okay, you need your rifle card. Well, I was one of the few guys that actually wore skivvies, undershorts, while I was sleeping. Half the guys wore nothing because it was so damn hot. So we're all thinking, well, where do you think that rifle card is, sir? And finally, the master sergeant got in there and started throwing rifles at us, and we got in our trench. But by the time we got in there, they gave us the wrong ammunition.
Oh, no.
So it was a real snafu. Fortunately, we had 2 platoons of, I think it was India Company, on either side of us, and they were picking up the slack in the middle because you could see this big blank space going out.
Right.
Where nothing was happening. No tracers, nothing.
Right.
Next day, when we finally got through the attack, we found this kid on the wire. He was dead. evidently he had a map in his
The
pocket.
guy that was selling you the orange crushes.
Yeah. He had a map of our compound in his pocket, and his whole scheme had been to act like he was selling us sodas, but actually making a map of the compound so he could know where to go and what to hit and things like that.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a common problem in Vietnam, is that you never knew who the enemy was, and a lot of times they'd come into camp and they mark off, distances to to what needs to be hit and that type thing.
Oh yeah.
Now you were talking about that where the guy was standing there demanding your card and everything. Kind of remind me. You ever seen that movie Zulu? I believe it was Zulu.
Yeah, the British in Africa.
Yeah. And they're just being, overrun by, these Zulu warriors,
Yeah.
And this British guy, over the weapons, he's standing there and saying that I can't remember exactly what he was doing, but he had to do it a certain way and all that, and they're all standing in line waiting for, instead of just throwing them out to them or something, and it kind of reminded me of that when you were talking about it. But it's funny how we kind of get overtrained sometimes, and we kind of can't get out of that mindset, in an emergency,
We had an experience at the end of the runway. Our squadron was F-4Bs, Phantoms, and I was one of the plane captains, so I drive the TUD truck and the little V thing for hauling them in and everything. Anyway, this guy lands and blows both back tires at the same time.
Yeah.
So he made it to the end of the runway, and that's where he was stuck.
Oh, wow.
So me and my crew get out and get down there right away, and at the end is an Air Force trailer with this, 28 stripes on his sleeve and everything. Anyway, we get down there, and I tell the guys, I says, I'm going to back it up, I'm going to hook us up, and then I'm going to put the power brake on, and I want you to both get those tires off at the same time. We're not going to do one and one because there's other aircraft coming in. Well, this, whatever he was, comes running out, and I see him running across the dirt towards us, and I said, you guys keep going. I go over and I said, yes, sir, can I help you? He goes, you can't pick them up at the same time. You can't pick them up at the same time. That's not procedure. You got to follow SOP.
Yeah.
I says, well, sir, it's fine. We're almost done. And he says, no, you can't. And then I turn around, and they finally got it done. We dropped it. I said, well, never mind. I'll teach you. And he wanted us to do one tire at a time. And I'm thinking, I ain't sitting out here on this runway with all this bombs and everything sitting on this aircraft.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, you were talking about that landing. I was in Turkey. I was at a place called Erhat, Turkey. It was over in the eastern part of Turkey, and I'm sitting out there on a post one day, and I'm just out there, just kind of cooling my heels there. And about that time, I heard this god awful screeching noise. I look up, and there's this F-100 come. It's Turkish pilot flying it and everything. Well, he hits the runway and he lost his brakes, and he's trying. You can see him standing up in the cockpit trying to stop that plane,
Yeah.
And right at the end of the runway, they had this net come up, and it was like a slingshot. He hit that doggone net and popped backwards.
Oh yeah.
But they had to take that dude to the hospital.
I bet.
But now, is there anything else happened in your first tour that noteworthy? Or
the only thing that I can remember that was really noteworthy, other than a bunch of weird experiences, but we got to do Operation Starlight. It was the first major operation in Vietnam. And we flew air support over Chu Lai for the 7th Marines and their landing force. And that was a long operation.
Yeah.
Nobody slept for quite a while there.
Well, I remember, you went over there in '65, and I was 15 in '65, and I remember, I'll never forget, I was in St. Petersburg, Florida when 1964, when the Gulf of Tonkin incident happened, and we sent our fighters in North Vietnam, retaliate against. There were supposed to be 2 attacks, and one of them didn't even happen. The second attack, Johnson, made that up.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember thinking then, and I was 14 at the time, I was thinking, well, usually wars are over in 3 or 4 years. I won't have to even worry about this, And, of course, 4 years later, we've got 500,000 troops on the ground over there, and I'm sitting there and, senior in high school, and I'm thinking, all right, what I do now,
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the reason I put my name on the delayed enlistment, for the Air Force, so I wouldn't get in the draft,
Well, my little brother, when I came back from my first tour,
Yeah.
It was summer of '66, and he was going into his senior year.
Yeah.
And so we were talking out in the parking lot with him and his girlfriend, now wife, and I said, so what are you doing after high school? And he says, well, I was thinking about being a Marine like you. I said, oh, no, you don't want to do that. You're the youngest in the family. Yeah. You're used to being pampered. You're a picky eater. You just don't want to do Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah.
I said, if you do anything, go in the Air Force. Yeah. Those guys get extra pay if they don't have air conditioning. They get all sorts of perks that we never did. And he spent 20 years in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Well,
smart guy.
Yeah. Well, the reason I knew this, we had 2 incidents with the Air Force in Da Nang, other than the one at the end of the runway. Had nothing to do with anything other than Marines and Air Force. The first one was our XO was showing this new XO from the Air Force that was moving in across the road into barracks or whatever they were building. Anyway, he was showing them around our tent compound. We had mess tent, we had a laundry tent, we had this tent, everybody's in tents, the whole shot. And we were coming out of the mess tent as he was finishing up the tour, and we heard him, our XO, say to this lieutenant colonel, sir, what do you think of our little place here? And this lieutenant colonel from the Air Force looked around and says, this place is unfit for human habitation. And I thought, man, you ought to see what the grunts are going through if you think this is bad.
Yeah, you're in the rear with the gear.
Yeah, we had it made. We had showers hooked up. I mean, they were outdoor showers, and it wasn't hot water, but it was showers.
Well, the place I was at in Turkey, it was horrible conditions. I mean, now, like you're right. I mean, I think overall the Air Force has better food. I know as far as food they do, because I've been in the Army, plus, I've eaten, when we used to go train up Fort Campbell, we used to have to eat in the Army chow every now and then, and our food was a lot superior to that, But now, when we were in Turkey, about the only thing good I can say about that place, because we were on a Turkish air base and we were having to use their facilities, which were horrible. But they made sure we ate good. I mean, we had some of the best food, shipped in, and we'd have like T-bone steaks about every 2 or 3 days and stuff like that. So at least we had that to look forward to.
They built a snack bar across the road from us.
Yeah.
But they put a fence up with industrial wire facing outward to keep people from getting in. We thought it was to keep the VC out. Yeah. But it was to keep the Marines out. And we found that out when we went over and tried to order hamburgers. The guy goes, well, no, this is an Air Force compound. We're all going, aren't we all in the same military? Why the hell can't we have a hamburger? So when my little brother said he was going to Marine Corps, I said, nah, you go Air Force. I'll give you a lot better deal.
I don't blame you. What happened after you left Vietnam the first time? Where'd you go then?
They sent the whole squadron to Cherry Point, North Carolina. Yeah. And we were there for a while. We did a TAD deployment, or whatever you want to call it, for carrier quals down to Roosevelt Roads in Puerto Rico. Spent a month or so there. Got into some bad times with the Navy. 7th Fleet came in about the same time we were there. So normal inter-service rivalry. But I just got tired of all the people. I had an experience with one of my friends in Morehead City. They had bottle clubs in North Carolina. It was you had to go to a state liquor store if you wanted to buy any liquor.
Right.
You couldn't buy anything in a bar or anything like that. But the bottle club would let you keep a bottle in a locker, and then they would sell you the setup, the mixer or whatever, and it was $1 membership, which was no big deal. Anyway, we went to go to this club that we were all members with, and this new kid had checked in. Well, he couldn't get past the front door because he was black.
Yeah.
And so we said, no, that's it. And I said, this is all BS. I don't need that.
Yeah.
I'm going back over. At least I know where the enemy is over there. They're the little guys in black suits and the straw hats. Right. So I volunteered and headed back over in October. Went back through infantry training refresher in Camp Pendleton for a month. And then by December, we were in Chulai. And I was there until August of the next year, and they allowed me to come back early out so I could start college in September.
Now, Marines, they were primarily up north part of the country, right? Near the DMZ, up in there.
I.R.S is what it was called.
Now, Da Nang's up that way too, right?
Da Nang's about maybe 45-minute flight from the DMZ.
Right.
The only thing that would have been closer to Da Nang would have been Hue, as far as a major location.
Well, that was primarily a Marine operation way during the Tet Offensive,
Yeah.
Yeah. When you when you got out, you went to college, and I think you said you became a tax
accountant
with the I.R.S. That type thing.
Yeah.
And of course, you've had a varied career. I think. What are some other things you did after you got out?
When I first got out, I went to college. And I ended up at Santa Barbara City College, which was a real eye-opener because while I was in Chulai, they wanted me to re-enlist. They were going to make me an E6 staff sergeant and put me on recruiting duty and give me an $8,000 tax-free bonus, which in the Marine Corps, getting bonuses is just great. You don't get them that much. Anyway, my master sergeant said, I don't think it's a good idea. Why don't you just go to college, and then when you get out of college, if you want to come back, do it. So I went to Santa Barbara, and that's where I ran into SDS, the Black Student Union, BUMAS, and all the other organizations that were anti-war, anti-military, anti-whatever. And it was an eye-opener. And so I finally went out to UC Santa Barbara. I was a political science major because I figured this is where all the action is. Of course, with a political science degree and 10 cents, you could get a cup of coffee at Sambo's. And that and your
That's
DD
a name out of the past. I remember those restaurants.
I know.
Yeah.
There's still one, as I understand it, in Santa Barbara at the main on State Street, the main one that opened originally.
Yeah, I haven't seen a Sambo's in years.
They closed them because the Sambo's indication was black people were ignorant little guys or whatever. Yeah. That had nothing to do with black people. It was with Indians from India, but
but people get perception of reality.
Yeah, people get upset at the most unrealistic things.
Right.
So, anyway, so I got done with that, and I made it out of Santa Barbara without too much. I got to live through Ronald Reagan's assault on Isla Vista with the National Guard and the county sheriff there, who was on Newsweek and everything like that. So it was an interesting experience. There was almost more gunfire in Isla Vista than there was in Da Nang at one point. Oh, wow.
And that was like an anti-war thing?
Yeah, they had people like Angela Davis and I forget who the others were from the Chicago 7.
Right.
they were all speaking there. They banned ROTC on campus, drove it out. They banned football and any contact sports because they were too violent, which I thought was kind of ridiculous, because then they bombed the Bank of America and burned it to the ground with the guard inside.
Oh, wow. Did they kill him?
No, fortunately the police got there in time,
Yeah.
and he was able to get out, but he got singed.
Yeah.
And there was a very famous picture in the paper and on the news at that time showing the people outside throwing Molotov cocktails at this bank and a fire burning around, and he's standing in the glass doorway trying to figure out what the hell he wants to do.
Wow.
So,
Well, you know, it's funny how history repeats itself. You know, we've got all that was communist, a communist movement, and now we've got the same people, just different group, doing the same thing now with Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and so I like the name somebody gave me today, Pantifa. You know, but now you went back to Vietnam. What, 2014? I think you said.
Yeah, we did a 50-year reunion tour with military historical tours.
Yeah,
and it was about, I guess, 10 or 12 of us, all Marines, and the guide they had set up with us was a Marine. In fact, one of the guys that was a tour guide was the captain in charge of the Echo, I think it was either Echo or Fox Company, when they took Way at the Battle of Way. He was a platoon lieutenant or captain, and so we went back and we toured Marble Mountain. We went out to Quai Son. We went up into the mountains where the Mounted Guards live still, like they did in 1950. In fact, it was amazing to see the cities, as grown up as they were, capitalistic-wise, but as soon as you got outside of the city, it was all like 1964 all over again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, the Montagnards, they were even back then they were real pro-American, weren't they?
Oh yeah, and they got a bad deal because when we pulled out, they got a worse deal than the Kurds did when we pulled out of Iraq.
Yeah.
It was bad, but they seem to be doing okay now. They're not living high on the hog, so to speak, but they're still living the way they used to and enjoying it.
And I know we talked about how the Vietnamese are such nice people and really welcomed y'all, and treated you well.
For the most part, yeah. There didn't seem to be any animosity. Of course, I'm sure they only surrounded us with people that were going to be very polite and that. But one of the biggest shocks, though, was as we were getting ready to leave, we were at the airport in Hanoi, and these big plate glass windows they have at the entrance where you're going in to check in for your ticket, they had Amway all over it.
You tell me about that.
And we're all looking at that going, the hell is Amway doing in North Vietnam? And
they don't even go by that name anymore, do they?
No, it's all Vietnam, Republic of Vietnam. So,
well, what I mean is Amway, do they...
over there they do.
Oh, really? I was thinking Amway went to a different name over here.
They might have. I understand they broke up into a bunch of different groups, Nutrilite and all that, but all we saw was the Amway symbols and the word Amway there on the. I don't know.
You knew what that was.
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask you something. What do you think? Do you think Vietnam was a wasted effort, or do you think anything positive came out of what we did over there?
Wasted? No. I think some of the people in charge were wasted.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of not McCarthy. I can't remember who the defense secretary was. McNamara.
McNamara, yeah.
Oh,
I can't stand him.
Not a big fan of McNamara. I'm not a big fan of LBJ.
Right.
I'm definitely not a big fan of Westmoreland. I think he thought Marines were just something that he could toy with, because he'd have us go in and take hills, and then he'd turn it over to the Army, and they'd lose it, and we'd have to go back up and do the same damn thing again.
Buy the same real estate again.
You know, the way they fought that war was a waste.
Mm-hmm.
But the war itself, no. It's like, I can't remember his name now, the guy that was a sole survivor from that SEAL team.
Yeah.
Him and a kid that was a sniper, both of them said, if you just turn the Marines loose, they'll take care of it.
Oh, yeah.
Just let them go. You don't put leashes on them and just say, okay, well, you can only go so far. And,
right.
They did that in Kuwait. You know, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and they took back Kuwait, and that was great. But we could have taken all the way to Fallujah, and it would have been over.
Well, I think the problem we had, you know, in the first Gulf War was Bush. I mean, if you consider, first of all, he relied too much, I think, on the UN to handle that war. Of course, he set down 4 different goals. Yeah. He accomplished those goals, but the problem was, if he had gone into Iraq then, Saddam Hussein was totally unprepared.
Yeah.
And there was no organized resistance. Mm-hmm. And you had the Shiites that would have supported the United States, because they, you know, we abandoned them. Mm-hmm. Okay, kind of like, you know, the Montagnards, you know. Mm-hmm. And so, and the Kurds, they would have helped us. And so what had happened, though, by not going in there then, Saddam Hussein had 12 years to prepare, because he knew sooner or later we were going to take him out.
We went, the unit I was with, 1st Marine Division, we went to do a thing called Operation Native Fury, which was to help train Kuwaitis in case there was another insurgent. And this was in 1994, April of 94. We were over there, and we no sooner got our MPF ships in position to offload and everything, the report came down that the Republic Guard moved within 40 miles of the northern border. And we're sitting there going, well, the heck.
Yeah.
And nothing ever did happen, but we were able to offload both those ships in 48 hours.
Yeah.
It was just, it was stupid that, and I understand it as a political scientist. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason I understand it, is as a political scientist. The military is just another form of negotiation. Mm-hmm. And politicians and statesmen all use this. But for the most part, especially nowadays, none of them have a dog in the fight.
What was it Clausewitz said, that war is another means to advance a political goal? Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly how he put it, but basically, you know, it's just that, you know, what used as a political goal, mm-hmm. you know, but now personally, I think the sad thing, one thing, my opposition to the Vietnam War, and don't get me wrong, I was a patriot. I wanted to do something. That's one reason I joined up, you know, but at the same time, I didn't want to go into a situation where they were fighting it the way they were fighting it. I think the opposition to the war among most Americans was not because we thought that it was a wasted effort to fight communism. We all were behind that. It was the way we fought that war, mm-hmm. you know, and then the way we ended it. You know, one thing I can say about Nixon is that he, although it wasn't a perfect ending of the war, all he basically did was Kennedy. I'm convinced of this, and you may agree with me on this or may not, but I'm convinced that when he was assassinated, he'd already made his mind up that he was not going to expand that war in Vietnam. I think that what you know, he said as much when the interview with Walter Cronkite right before he was assassinated. We had 21,000 support troops over there when Kennedy died, and I think he had come to the realization that, hey, especially after the coup, that was kind of a wake-up call, when Diem got overthrown. But he was basically thinking that, hey, if the Vietnam are going to have to win this war themselves, we'll help them, we'll give them supplies, a few advisors and things like that, but that's it, And so, of course, Johnson came in there, and he had all of the whiz kids, the bean counters like McNamara and the rest of them that, McNamara had come from Ford Motor Company, and these guys tried to manage the war.
Yeah.
And they were, there was a famous book written by, I can't remember his name, but The Best and the Brightest, and it was a very good book, but these guys just royally screwed everything up, Johnson included. And then Nixon came along. When Nixon and Kennedy debated, they were so close in the way they believed that they almost, they had to kind of change a little bit of their arguments so they wouldn't sound alike during the debates,
Right.
Like on Castro and all this stuff. But they were a lot closer in the way they believed than and actually they were friends at one time, and so what Nixon did when he came in when he ended the war in 1973 was basically go back to the Vietnamization that Kennedy had started. By this time, by 72 we only had like just a few thousand, a handful of troops left in Vietnam. But when, of course, in '68, we had completely destroyed the Viet Cong as an effective fighting force in 1968. And then in 1972, you had the Eastertide offensive where Giap, launched that all-out invasion. We used the B-52s to break that up along with Vietnamese troops. So, but what basically Nixon was saying is that, if anything happens, we'll come back in with our Air Force and use your Army, and we'll destroy them again, if they come back again.
Right.
And I think had we kept that arrangement, which wouldn't have been that big of a deal to us. We would have, Vietnam would have be like Korea today,
I don't think after Nixon got moved out and resigned,
Right.
I don't think anyone in Washington, D.C. had any inclination of providing the gear that was necessary for support for the Vietnamese.
They'd already made their mind up.
Yeah, and this gets
that
back
was the Democratic Party that did that.
primarily. Yeah. So, but even the Republicans, I think, were just so tired of the whole thing.
Well, yeah, everybody was tired of it.
Didn't want to spend any more money on it. We just want
Right.
to forget this thing, let it go away.
But that, to me, though, this is my big thing about America and its wars. If you're going to start a war where you've got guys who are willing, like yourself and others, that are willing to put everything on the line, okay, sacrifice their bodies, their health, their lives to fight for a country, then that country ought to ensure that they don't start a war unless they're willing to win it, because that is a slap in the face to those 58,000 men and women who died over there,
Well, it's the same thing that's going on in the Middle East now.
Right.
We just keep slapping people around, but nobody's actually winning anything.
No.
Not even a war.
Right.
Yeah.
But when I hear like Walter Cronkite in 1968 said that Vietnam was unwinnable, no war is unwinnable.
Right.
If you got the right strategy and the will to win it, you'll win it. But the problem was we didn't have the right strategy or the will to win it.
And that was one of the problems with it back here, is because all people heard was what people like Walter Cronkite
Right.
and who's the guy now from Canada? He's a big announcer now, but he was just getting his start. Dan Rather.
Dan Rather, yeah.
These guys were sitting there just reporting any bad stuff they could.
Right.
It's like today with the news media. They don't report anymore. They sensationalize.
Yeah.
And
what they do, they either outright lie about what happened, or they omit what happened. They don't even talk about it, or they distort, and they're doing a disservice to the American people. I'm a firm believer that if we had a good media that would just do its job and report, it doesn't matter if it hurts a Republican, it hurts a Democrat, just say it like it is.
Yeah.
The American people are smart enough that they'll make the right decision if they're armed with the right information, But the problem you got right now is that the mainstream media, which is NBC, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, all of those guys they're just an arm of the Democratic Party. Of course, Fox News, they're more, established than Republican. A lot of things you hear from them, they omit stuff. I mean, that's just like a kid the other day was killed in North Carolina. 5-year-old white child. A black child walked up and blew his brains out in his front yard while he was riding his bicycle. Okay, you haven't heard hardly any. I don't think you've heard anything on that.
There's a similar story, only it was a black kid killed by another black kid.
Right.
And same thing. You just don't hear about these because they want to sensationalize. They want to sensationalize the deaths created by the police.
Right.
When in fact, no one wants to take responsibility for screwing the black community and causing all this interracial hatred.
Ever since George Floyd died, I think there's been 36 small children in the black community that have died in these large cities.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about them.
Although the Chicago mayor does have protection around her house because she doesn't want the riots to reach her.
Right. Of course, she's important. Nobody else is.
Yeah, of course, her life matters more, don't it?
Yeah, her life matters. Yeah. Now there was also I noticed this last night. I wasn't even aware of it, but George Floyd, guy killed him. It took 9 minutes to kill him. I was looking at a white guy down in Texas. I can't remember. I think his first name was Tim, but this guy, police officer, had his knee in his back for 13 minutes. Okay, guy asked 30 times for him to get off of him because he couldn't breathe. Guy died. Of course, I didn't until last night. I never heard of this situation. And the only reason I'm bringing this up, it's not to try to be racist or anything like that. It's just the fact that whether it's black people being destroyed in these big cities, or which more unarmed white people are killed by police officers than black people. But that just doesn't fit the narrative. You've got to, like we were talking earlier, never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
And
I believe everything we're experiencing now can be traced back 50 years to the Vietnam War.
Right.
And the fact that we lost respect for the government. Of course, they didn't earn it at the time, but we lost respect for the government. We expect the government to do too much for us.
Absolutely.
The Constitution, I mean, even the ones that think they know what they're talking about have no clue about what they're talking about. They'll argue, well, Second Amendment didn't want you to have AR-15s. Well, George Washington, if he'd had an AR-15, he'd want to have one today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Some people have asked me, he says, well, what do you want? You want an M1A1 tank? I said, hell yeah.
Yeah.
If I could have one in my front yard, I would.
Yeah, because, it's like, I think it was Schwarzkopf said that, when he went in on patrol, whether it's Vietnam or not, he wanted the B-52s backing him up. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing about it is, it's like AR-15 guy was talking about the other day. This guy was really smart, but he was talking about AR-15 for home defense is one of the best things you can have. He said, especially for a woman. He said, if you look at a woman, you'll see these films where a boyfriend will give his girlfriend a shotgun and let her fire it, and she looks like a fool because
she's holding it
spins
out
her around and knocks her down and all this stuff. But he said, but you get a woman an AR-15, she's like, she can fire it, even a small child, And if you teach them how to use it, they could be very lethal in a home defense situation, know.
I'll tell you what you just said a minute ago, that all of this going on right now can be traced back to the Vietnam War. We have an episode where that we haven't released yet.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
It's titled 1963. He makes the same exact argument.
Well, the argument I make in that episode, which we haven't put out yet, but I lost my parents in 1963, January of 63, and of course that changed my life, totally forever. But at the end of that year, November, we lost, Kennedy was assassinated.
I was in Memphis.
Yeah. Okay. And so that one event, more than anything else, to me, changed America more than anything, because it allowed a man, Lyndon Johnson, to become president of the United States, who, had it not been for that assassination, would have never had an opportunity to become president. He had spent his entire life with one goal in mind, becoming president of the United States. He had a plan. His plan was to join the Congress, gain control, get one of the highest powered positions in Congress, which he did. Then he ran for Senate. In 1948, they called him Landslide Lyndon because he only won by like 100 votes, and was using dead votes and dead people and all that. And so he gets in the Senate. The way he got to the power in the House was he befriended Sam Rayburn, who was a bachelor. And Lady Bird would invite him over for dinner, and anyway, that's how he got in good with Sam Rayburn. And then he got in good with Richard Russell, who was another bachelor, and Lady Bird would bring him over to the house, and they would schmooze him and all this stuff. Well, anyway, he got to be one of the most powerful men in Congress. Okay, and that's one reason. After Johnson became president, he was actually one of the most effective presidents. He passed more legislation than any president in American history because of the knowledge of the Congress. Okay.
Yeah, he knew where all the bones were buried.
He knew, and he knew how to manipulate people.
Yeah.
But what had happened? He screwed up royally in his plan because he I don't know what he was thinking, but in 1960, rather than running a strong campaign to get delegates secured, he just kept hee-hawing around. Well, he didn't realize it, but here comes John Kennedy, who got the delegates that he ordinarily would have got. So that was his window of opportunity to become president, and he lost it.
Yeah.
Okay, so when Kennedy got elected, and he chose Johnson as vice president, so you'd have that northern and southern coalition of Democrats. Johnson was almost suicidal because as vice president, he had lost all his power. He couldn't even get anything done in the Congress and Senate, because by this time, being vice president, everybody thought, well, you don't have any power. Why should we listen to you?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, Kennedy, had he lived, would have probably been reelected in '64. He would have run another 4 years. Then Robert Kennedy would have probably succeeded him.
Yeah.
Okay. So Johnson wouldn't have had a dog chance in hell
Yeah.
of becoming president, but for that assassination.
When I was in Congress, I worked for Robert
Yeah.
Kennedy
Oh,
on his
did you?
campaign out
Yeah.
in California.
Yeah. And compared to today's Democrats, Robert Kennedy was a conservative,
Yeah.
compared to today.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
So was John, for that matter.
Oh yeah, John was too. John's the last Democrat president I could even today I could have voted for
Right.
if he ran for president. But you know the Democratic Party has gone off the rails, and it's because the very people that were out there in the streets demonstrating, that you know the Vietnam War was the catalyst. It opened a Pandora's box because it allowed all those communist professors who had infiltrated our colleges from the 30s to get behind this anti-war movement, and that's where we lost the Vietnam War. It wasn't on a battlefield; it was in the streets here at home.
Yeah.
You know, and what I'm saying, if Kennedy hadn't have died, America would be a drastically different place today, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and I believe that Kennedy was assassinated by an American. I understand the shooter they got,
Right.
but you know, there was just too many other things involved. And one of the things that always made me wonder about how it happened was that he had made a statement to the press that he was going to Dallas, but when he came back, he was going to make an announcement that would change this country. And I think he was going to expose a bunch of people. And I'm pretty sure they said, well, we can't have that. So we got this one clown from Oswald, Lee Harvey.
Well, here's the way I look at it, and of course you will never be able to. You know, you can come up with theories that the Boy Scouts killed John Kennedy. I mean, you know, I'm just saying there's so many theories out there, but the one that makes the most sense to me is, you know, in the late 50s, well, 59, Frank Sinatra set up a meeting between himself and Giancana at the behest of Joe Kennedy to gain support for his boys to run president. For John Kennedy to run for president. And of course, Giancana hated the Kennedy boys. He liked Joe Kennedy, but he hated the Kennedy boys because they had been on the McClellan Committee in '57 going after organized crime. And Robert Kennedy was merciless, man. I mean, he had embarrassed them so bad and everything.
Yeah.
And at that meeting, Sinatra, you know, was told by Giancana to tell Joseph, said, look, I like you, but I don't like your boys. He said, if you keep them under control, he said, I'll give you support and I'll help you. And that's what happened, because in a primary in West Virginia, 1960, of course, the mafia controlled the United Mine Workers, and they helped get that vote over there, because think about it, West Virginia is a Protestant, white Protestant country, you know, and here was a Catholic boy running for president. You know, that don't go over good in those mountains, you know. So, but the UMW was able to convince a lot of change there, and so he won the primary there. And then in the November general election, there was only 119,000 votes that separated Kennedy and Nixon, you know. And, of course, Giancana voted a bunch of dead people and everything else, like the Democrats are going to do this time. And, of course, he barely squeaked by. Well, Kennedy went, which was unprecedented. A few days after the election, he went down to Key Biscayne and had a meeting with Nixon. And I believe, well, they know that a lot of this went on, that basically what it was is that he knew Nixon knew how he won, and he was trying to feel Nixon out. Are you going to challenge me? And unlike Gore in 2000, you know, Nixon said, no, I'm not going to tear the country apart.
Right.
You know, I'll let you have it. But anyway, to make a long story short, you know, when Kennedy got elected, and then Robert Kennedy got in there as Attorney General at the behest of Joseph Kennedy, he goes after the mob again. I mean, he goes after them big time. Well, he did that though. Here, I'm getting ahead of myself. Joe Kennedy had that bad stroke, okay, and after he had that stroke, he couldn't keep his boys in line no more.
Yep.
And that's when Robert Kennedy went after like Hoffa and went after, you know, all the Giancana and the rest of them. And so I think what happened, you know, like I read a book one time about Giancana. You know, he was killed himself in '75. They put a hit out on him. But one of the ways that the mafia took care of crooked politicians, they won't kill, although back then they would. They won't kill an honest cop or an honest politician, but they would kill a dirty politician or a dirty cop. Okay, and so what they did, one of the things they tried to do, like when Franklin Roosevelt was running president in November of he was president-elect in 1933. He was down in Chicago, and Mayor Cermak of Chicago was assassinated. Okay, you're taught that the guy was going after Roosevelt, but he wasn't. He was going after Cermak. Okay, and what the mob will do, this is a common practice. They'll get somebody everybody thinks is a nut, and use him to assassinate somebody. Okay. And that's what like Marcello Marcello hated Robert Kennedy too, because he had him deported down to Guatemala, and so Marcello was heard saying that I'm going to hit Kennedy. Well, this private detective said, "Whoa, you're gonna kill the Attorney General of the United States?" He said, "No, you don't understand." He said, "You cut off the head of the dog, the tail dies." You know. And so I believe that if anybody had anything to do, it was the mob. And also, you know, Jack Ruby wasn't nothing but a hitman. You know, he went in there to silence Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
And I think when Lee Harvey Oswald heard on tape saying I'm a patsy, he really realized at that moment that he had been set up.
He'd been set up, and he was going down for the count.
Because Marcello's, Lee Harvey Oswald's uncle worked for Marcello. And he's the one that we believe recruited Lee Harvey Oswald to do the hit or the assassination. But no, I mean, of course, like I say, we can talk all day about that, and you know, there's, you know, some people believe Johnson had him killed. Some people believe the CIA was involved. You know, and you can make a good case for all of them. You know, I mean, you know, Johnson had a motive, you know, to kill him. You know.
But there were a lot of people. I think it was someone outside. I'm not sure if anyone in the government actually had anything to do with it. I'm sure they weren't that unhappy that it happened.
Right.
But I remember the reports coming over the radio. We were just coming back from Chow in Memphis on a buildings and grounds detail, and this corporal comes running out and says, "President's been shot."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, there goes the 96 for Thanksgiving. that was the only thought I had. I'm not going to get to go home for Thanksgiving because there was a 96-hour pass coming up that weekend.
Yeah. Now, I was 13. I was going. I just got back from lunch. I was going to my English class after lunch, and I'd seen all these teachers standing out talking, and you know, and I heard when I passed them, I heard things like, "Oh, is he dead?" and stuff like that. And when I got to my class, and the teacher told us all about it, you know, we listened to the newscast for the rest of the day. You know, they piped them in on the PA. You know.
Yeah.
But now '63 was a wild year. '68 was even wilder, you know.
Oh yeah. But, I watched Bobby, and I really liked that guy.
Yeah.
I watched him make his acceptance speech in California at the Marriott Hotel in downtown L.A. In fact, that's where I first met him earlier that year. And we're watching him on TV up in Santa Barbara in the campaign headquarters. And he walks off, and then someone says, "What's that sound?" And I hear this pop, pop, pop. And somebody says, "Oh, someone's stepping on the balloons." I said, "No, that's small arms fire."
Yeah.
I said, "I'll give you 10 to 1 he's dead."
Yeah.
And no sooner said that, and Shriver comes out to the podium and says, "We need a doctor in the back. Bob Kennedy has been shot." And I just walked out of the campaign headquarters. My fiance and I went out. And
you were actually at the campaign headquarters.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
I was that destroyed my whole view of politics at that point. I was just sick to death. This is beyond anything I can comprehend, that people would go so far as to kill a man because they did man, because they did man, because they did man, because they did man,